Imagine early in your career, the executive director of your 1,100-person public health institution sends you to a meeting in their place, but on the way you get a call from a local elder matriarch that runs a housing development. Courtney, you need to come to this meeting right now because we have violence. We need your help. We had another incident. Now, I had a little boost in my acute stress reaction because this is a formidable matriarch. And I work in a city that has a constituent services mentality. If you get a call for anything, like responding to fixing a pothole or getting a child in the right school assignment, you must show up. And then there's more acute stress reaction because I have to call my executive director and say, forget your little meeting, I'm going to this one instead. And I get there and the matriarch has a gavel in her hand, standing room only, pounding the gavel and saying, sit down here and tell us why you think you can help us in this neighborhood. I said, wait, didn't you ask me to come to this meeting? Of course, I said that under my breath because this is a matriarch and I had already activated grandmother respect protocol. And she says, and I thought that she wanted to hear about the research we had done on 130 men over 3 years who had experienced penetrating injury and might live in their neighborhoods and have post-traumatic stress disorder, or the hundreds of incidents that she knows we responded to, like 100 boys who had saw their friend shot on the middle of a football field during a game. And we delivered disaster behavioral health techniques like psychological first aid, post-traumatic stress management, critical incident stress management to these young boys, or welcoming 600 beautiful new residents to our city because they were evacuating from Hurricane Katrina to live in our state. So, where have you been? We've been doing this for 50 years. We've been responding. We've never seen you. You look like us, but we don't know you. You need to sit down and learn from her. She's been doing it for 30 years. Who's teaching whom? And this started my education on what it means to be an actual responder and what community, whole community, what community means as defined by the community outwards. Now it got worse because I thought I needed to do more qualitative research on the neighborhood, and I did a study in a barber shop, and as soon as I got there, a 14-year-old boy says, hey, what does the IRB say? And how much is the stipend? I said, man, how do you even know this thing exists? He says, you don't think we've seen you before? You've come here, you've researched my grandmother, my aunt. All we know is you're going to write a paper, get a promotion, and leave, and our lives are going to stay the same. And this is a very sobering reality for a 14-year-old. Imagine yourselves at 14 years old, and what you thought about and what you cared about, what you knew. So I then embedded myself in the community. I started going to every meeting, cookouts, neighborhood cleanups, and also responding at the local level to these micro incidents after work, after finishing work. I saw amazing things. There were so many incidents. In one year, we had 13,000 Part 1 crimes. I call them trauma-inducing crimes because each of them caused that boost in acute stress reaction. All these hormones running through somebody's body. And aggregate, I actually think they equal the equivalent of an MCI. So maybe these people deserve the same techniques that we delivered to the marathon bombing recipients and those people who were affected. So there was one particular incident, though, that made me actually decide to become an emergency manager. A man had set himself on fire after cutting a gas line, causing an explosion that destroyed 25 apartments, 50 people homeless. It looked like a missile that hit the building. So big that Ellen DeGeneres brought one of the families to her show because they dropped their child from a third-floor window to be caught in the arms of a fireman. Very powerful, dramatic, but no emergency management support for the disaster behavioral health piece. So I had to watch the neighborhood and had the pleasure of helping the neighborhood respond. And it was difficult, but even more so in the recovery phase. 50 lawyers, 50 victim witness support processes. But I saw poetry in motion because these people knew how to do a thing. They had skills, they had compassion, they had operations, they stood things up and stood them down. And I got a chance to meet some great people, including a 100-pound, 17-year-old Puerto Rican girl who stabilized a house party where all the participants saw their friend stabbed, and then they were subsequently shot at. So they run back into the apartment, going from room to room, football players, different folks, and she's stabilizing them. Breathe with me. Look me in my eye. Hey, stop all that noise. You're triggering these people. Hey, can you stay? I have to help someone else. All by herself. Now, we had trained her and 140 other people in one neighborhood, 101 in another, a total of 800 people in the city at the community level, complementing 1,200 that were already in the school department and in the housing department, and then 80 more lead responders like ourselves that have deployed to several incidents around the world. Now, this capacity I'm talking about, it might actually approximate the same saturation of CPR and first aid skills in the room. Anybody? So that means if there is that car accident, if there is that fall from a roof, people are like 1 degree of separation, maybe 3 degrees of separation from someone who has the same skills we have: post-traumatic stress management, critical incident stress management, psychological first aid. And maybe this capacity can allow us to take care of most of the incidents that might happen large scale and at the local level that will happen in our jurisdiction. And the severity and frequency are increasing. In fact, without this capacity, we would have never been able to take care of people impacted by the marathon bombing. So imagine the Prudential Mall, 52 flights up the top of the Prue restaurant, hundreds of people running down 52 flights of stairs, seeking refuge, scattering, ending up at home in their neighborhoods where English might not even be the primary language. They're not going to go to an FAC. They're not going to read the PIO communications that we put out. They're not going to schedule an appointment with a therapist. This capacity is what we believe we need that might help us take care of our cities. When we support this capacity and the system correctly, we can handle this impact. But if we don't, if we get it wrong, then all we've done is subjected these people to worse hazards than our first responders. We know what it's like when we don't do that right. But they're going to respond anyway. They have been for years and they will, so they're subjected to it anyway. So if we do this correctly, maybe some of the notions that I've thrown up in the air during these stories can be woven into a new definition of what we call whole community, what it means to interact with and learn from and partner with individuals and community leaders. And if we do that right, maybe we can build, preserve, and protect the resilience of all the jurisdictions represented in this room. Thanks.